It looks like it's time to get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining our live workshop today. My name is Isaac, and I'll be the instructor for today's workshop. And the topic for today is going to be how to create a real-time chat application with JavaScript and PubNub. Okay, so a few things to mention before we start this workshop. The first one being is that we're not going to be taking questions during the workshop. We want to make sure we can build out the whole application first, and then once we're done, then we're going to open the floor up for questions, and you can feel free to ask, whatever you need then. Another thing to mention is we're recording this lecture, so if maybe we're going a little bit too fast and you want to watch, the workshop later, you can do so because we'll make the link available to you in your student dashboard. Okay, so to get started, we're going to need to download starter kit, okay? And so let's go ahead and let's navigate to PubNub so we can just see, this is where we're going to be, this is the service we're going to be using for real-time chat features. And then this here, this URL is the starter kit we're going to be using, which is going to, be the foundation we build on. So I'm just going to clone this to my clipboard. And then we're going to come to our desktop, and we'll change directories onto our desktop, and then I'm going to clone that starter kit. Okay, so from here, let's change directories into the starter kit, and then we'll open it up inside of our text editor. Okay. So from here, let's just go ahead and take a moment to walk through the file tree and discuss what's going on. So first, we've got a simple index.html, right? And as of now, there's really nothing visible in between the body here, right? The only thing I've actually added to the body is these app scripts. The first one you'll notice is a CDN, which is loading in the SDK for PubNub. And by using this SDK, we'll be able to publish messages in real time. And then, of course, we have a regular JavaScript file set up for our custom script logic. Okay. And as you see right now, the only thing we have inside of this JavaScript file is a simple import of a new PubNub client, which we'll talk about, how to set up here in a minute. Okay, so that's really all there is to our starter kit. So let's go ahead and let's start off by building out our user interface. Okay, so we're going to start off by setting up a couple input fields, okay? Because let's imagine this is a real kind of chat application, something like Facebook Messenger or Kik Messenger, right? To where you have two users that are having a conversation in real time. Okay, so let's do the first input for user 1 and the second input for user 2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll say H1. This will be for user 1. And then we'll do an input here. And for the input, let's go ahead and let's target it with an ID. And we'll call this input 1. And then let's give it a placeholder, and let's just call this the message. Okay. And then let's go ahead and let's wrap this inside of a div, and then that way we can stack a button right below it. Okay, so we'll go ahead, we'll pass in our div, and then we'll just put the input between there. And then right below that, I'll go ahead and pass a button in, at which point I'll go ahead and I'll put the word send. Okay, so from here, let's do a similar approach for user 2. So we'll just say user 2, and then we'll do a div. Inside the div, we'll do an input. The input will have an ID, and the ID will be equal to input 2. And then the placeholder will be the same, right? Just a message. Okay, and then from here, let's do a similar approach with a button that says send. Okay, and now we have two inputs set up for a user. We need an output. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that here. So let's just say this is the message output. Okay. And right below here, let's go ahead and just put in an empty div. and this div will just be populated with output later. Okay, so we'll just put an ID here. Okay, and we'll call this our output. And we'll just leave it empty again because we want to populate that with, you know, the message output from these inputs. Okay, so let's take a moment, save all, and then let's go ahead and launch this using a live server. Okay, if you don't have one installed, you can install one real easy by going npm install -g http-server. Okay, and I've already installed that, so I'm not going to run the command. But once you've done that, you can simply run HTTP server in your root, and from here, it's going to serve it at a local port. Okay, and then from there, we can use the real-time messaging via this extension. So let's go ahead and check out our user interface at local port 8080. Okay, there's localhost 3000. So let's try local port 8080. Okay, so as we can see here, we've got, you know, a couple of you know, different inputs for different users, and then, you know, just empty output down here. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up so we can see any errors or anything like that. Okay, so now we have the user interface set up. The next step is we need to set up our PubNub client here. Okay, so PubNub requires us to sign up for an account and use, you know, credentials so they can, you know, keep track of which developers are, you know, doing what. So if you don't have a PubNub account, you can go ahead and sign for free by just going to pubnub.com and you know, signing up. Okay, so once you've signed up, it's going to go ahead and it's going to log you in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. And then you're just going to go to create a new app, and then your app will appear down here. Okay, so I'm going to click on my app. If you notice, it's giving me a pair of publish and subscribe keys. If you'll notice, that matches up with what I need for my PubNub client here. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy these, and I'm going to paste them right on into my script here. Okay, so now we can authenticate our end user, and from here we can go ahead and we can set up the different you know, logic to create a conversation. Okay, so first things first is our buttons. They're going to need a click event to run each time they're pressed. So what I'm going to do is on the first button, I'll say onClick equals, and I'll make it equal to a function called send, and I'm going to pass in 1. And that way, the function knows that user 1 is sending this message. Okay? And then I'm going to do a similar approach with my second button down here, except I'm going to send 2 so that we know user 2 is sending the message. Okay? So from here, we can go ahead and save all. Okay, and now we got to set up the dollar symbol, which we're going to use to target the element values. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we're going to say function $, and then each time we're going to return an actual instance of that ID. Okay, so now each time we use $, we're, you know, really targeting that given ID. Okay, we just created a shortcut for ourselves in that way. So next thing we need to do is we need to set up our output and our channels. Okay, so our output would be this element here, right? So we need to create a variable which we can then bind and you know, populate the inner HTML of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's go ahead and come in here. And we'll just start off by declaring a variable. Okay. So this variable is going to be called output. It's going to be equal to bling output. Okay, so we're targeting the element with that ID, assigning to this variable. Then from here, we need to set up our channel. Okay, so when we're subscribing messages on real-time networks, we can set up different channels, right? So that way, if we want to have more than one instance of communication in that way, we can. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up a channel based on the one located in my PubNub account. So if I go to the debug console down here, we can see they provide us with a default channel. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to use that as my channel. All right. So now we've done that. The next step is we need to set up an event listener to where every time we publish a new message, we can then run a callback function based on that. Okay, so now we can set up the send function. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's say function send, and then if you remember, we are passing in an argument, right? And it's going to be the number 1 or the number 2. So let's go ahead and let's just pass in end represent number. And then we're going to reference our PubNub client here. We're going to say PubNub dot publish. And then we're going to pass in the following configuration. We're going to pass in the channel we want to publish to, which will just be this channel here. Okay, then we're going to pass in the message. Okay, so for us, the message is going to be one of two things, and that's where we can use a ternary operator. Okay, so if n equals 1, then the message is going to be based on the first output. But if it does not equal that, then we know it's going to be based on the second output, and we can, display different messages. So let's go ahead and we'll pass in a ternary operator here. We'll go ahead and say if n equals 1, then the message will be equal to input 1 dot value. Otherwise, it will be equal to input 2 dot value. Okay. Oops, looks like I forgot my 2 here. Okay, and see how we're just targeting these different IDs, right? Input 1, input 2. So from here, we can go ahead and let's add on some context. Okay, so we'll display the message, but also let's display a little tag to let us know who the author of the message is. Okay, so for this, I'm just going to use some simple concatenation. So I'll say plus, and it'll be user1 if, it's the input 1 value. Okay, but if it's the input 2 value, then we're going to add the name user2. And that way we can display, oops, there we go. That way we can display different user authors or different message authors, based on what input it came from. Okay. All right, so now we have that set up. The last thing we need to do is set up a callback. Okay, so the callback is going to be labeled as X, and this is going to be what's going to run after we publish the message. Okay, so in our case, let's go ahead and let's clear our input out. Okay, each time publish a message to clear the last input out, and that way it'll be ready for the next message. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do another ternary operator. Okay, so we'll say if the number equals 1, well, then we know that it's, the first user. So if it's the first user, what we're going to do is we're going to say input 1 dot value equals empty. Just a pair of empty quotes. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing for input 2. Okay, so if it does not equal 1, then we're going to say input 2.value equals empty pair of quotes. Okay, so now we're publishing a message each time one of those buttons is clicked. Okay, and so from here, we have to do one last step, and we have to set up the subscription for the message, right? So once the message is published, we're going to subscribe to it, and then we can run, you know, an event listener from there, which will allow us to display the message. Okay, so to do this, let's go ahead and reference our PubNub client here. Okay, so we'll just go ahead, come here, and we'll say pub nub dot add event listener. Oops, listener. Okay, and then we're going to be listening in for a message event. Okay, so we'll say message, and when there's a new message, we're going to run this callback function, which will produce an object. Okay, and the object's going to be our actual message. So let's go ahead and let's test that out by console logging the actual object itself. And so let's save all. And let's go to our browser here, refresh. Oops, looks like it is not liking that. So let's see where I messed up here. Oh yeah, you know, add event listener is the native browser event, but PubNub actually has the add listener event. That's what they call it with their library. Okay, so let's try that again. Let's give it a refresh. Okay, so no errors that time. Let's just throw a simple hello here. Okay, looks like we're not getting anything here. So let's just go ahead and see if it's hitting this, and see if we can get that callback running. Let's see here. What did I mess up? So each time we're going to be running a callback function. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see if I can just print out the message. So as we can see here, it's running my callback, right? It's erasing each time. But for some reason, my listener isn't working. So maybe I've got a an error here somewhere. Okay, let's just try dot add listener. Yeah, I believe that's how you spell listener. Maybe I did have it misspelled, listener. Let's refresh this for good measure. Make sure I didn't. Huh. 1 second, folks. I don't know what is going on here. Why we can't, or why it's not publishing these. Okay, so let's look at what it's publishing. That looks fine. Let me try wrapping this to a single statement here. No. Refresh in here. Well, that's odd. It seems to be, it has to be sending the message. Because it's running our callback. It's emptying out our inputs each time. So what could I be missing? Maybe it's not able to capture my value here. No, it should be able to, because it's able to empty the values. 1 second, folks. Again, my apologies. I don't know why it's not letting us run this. You know what? I'm going to try to just output it to the HTML. See if that will work, because it's not allowing me to console log it, and I don't know why. It might have something to do with Problems Network at the moment. We'll find out. I'm just going to try to output it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the output element, and I'm going to try to print the object message here. Okay, so for each new message, I'm going to have an empty space plus the object message. And then from here, we can go ahead and I can use the replace method. Okay, so I'll say replace. And I'm going to be passing in a regex. Okay, so we'll go ahead. If you don't know a regular expression, we're basically just, searching out something within a string. And that's something we're searching out today is these brackets, right? These, which we see in code. Okay, we want to replace those with an empty string. Okay, and then from here, we want to put a space between this message and the last message. So we'll go and concatenate by using standard concatenation approach here. And then we'll put the next message, which will be the output dot inner HTML. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see if I can at least, output that. Oh, you know what? I know what I forgot. My apologies. I forgot to subscribe, and I even said it before, we need to subscribe to the message that are published, and I totally skipped that. So let's add that real quick. This is pretty simple step. So we just need to say pubnub.subscribe. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we just need to pass in our channels. Okay, and in our case, we're just going to have the one channel, which is this one here. So that's why I couldn't subscribe our message, because I never told it which channel to subscribe to. I just created one. Okay, so that's a good little lesson there. And now each time we publish, we should, you know, be able to print out the message. So let's try it. Let's save all. You know, let's refresh again. We'll just say hello. Okay, so as you can see, it prints out hello from user 1. So I'll go ahead and try respond. I'll say hey there from user 2. We send that. As you can see, it responds from user 2. Let's respond again from user 1. We'll say, what are you doing today? Send that. As you can see, right? Publishes it in real time. And then, yeah, we can have, you know, the response if we want. Nothing, just chilling. Maybe I'll go to the beach. Okay, and as you can see, it doesn't matter that they replied 3 times, right? It was able to keep track that this was still user 2, and then when I finally reply from user 1, it goes back. Okay, and this is exactly how you know, these real-time messaging services like Facebook Messenger, Kick Messenger, right? This is all what's happening in the background. And they're just using a real-time publishing service like you know, PubNub or something similar, and you know, publishing the messages on that network. And yeah, this is a basic approach of how you can create a real-time chat application using JavaScript and PubNub together. So now let's go and open up the floor, and let's see if anyone has any questions over what we went over. Okay, so the floor is open.
Where did you get the starter project for?
I'm sorry?
Where did you get the starter project for PubNub?
Oh, the starter project. Are you talking about the starter kit here?
Yeah, Chat App Starter Kit.
Okay, so you're asking like, are you asking for this URL, or are you asking where this source code came from?
No, that URL.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, if you need the starter kit, this is the URL right here. And then you can just clone it, and it's basically, you know, it's ready to build. You just have to go and you have to add your own PubNub credentials and such. But yeah, good question. Any others today?
Hey, you said these videos are recorded, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Where do we go to access the archives for these?
The student dashboard is going to have a link next to each workshop button. It says you can watch the recordings here, and there's a little link. So if for some reason you can't locate that, just shoot me a Slack message, and I'll figure out what's going on. But it should be in your student dashboard, the link for all the recordings.
Okay, word. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any last questions today, guys?
Yes. I was wondering if you were having like a group conversation, a group chat, would you have to add more users?
A group chat.
You know, like I don't know, like you're talking to multiple people. Would you have to like add for user 3, user 4, like that?
Yeah, that's the general idea. Is for
Okay.
each user, they would, you know, have their own, you know, identifier. In this way, I just use numbers to identify the users.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, that's the basic approach. Is you could have as many users as you want, you know, talking on a channel. Typically, conversations between 2, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay, so like you can have like user one talking to multiple people at the same time, and they can send messages one at a time. And
Yep, yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
okay, all right, thank you.
Good questions. Any other questions today, guys?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
My question is, I mean, would you normally put user one and user two on the same page? I mean, if they were chatting from different locations, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily feel
Yeah.
the person's field.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. You would only have one input in the instance that you had two users, okay? But when they both went to the same URL, all you would have to do is you would have to make sure they were subscribed to the same channel. And then if they're both subscribed to the same channel, they're going to receive any messages coming in. Basically, that's what this does here.
Okay.
So I only put two inputs today to kind of demonstrate like, hey, it's two users talking. But yeah, you're absolutely right. In the real world, you're only going to have one input in your application. It's just you're going to be subscribed between those two channels.
And wouldn't you want some way to uniquely identify them? I mean, other than user one, user two. I mean, so how would you keep track of that if you had multiple people logging into your site?
Well, you just said it right there. As soon as they log in, I don't know if you've covered this section in the curriculum, but you can have a token to identify who they are, and
Okay.
and that in that way, I could just, instead of passing in user one, I could pass in maybe my token instead. I was just using the number one as an example, but yeah, you could definitely get more unique with an identifier.
Okay.
Yeah, and this stuff, guys, it can get pretty complex. You know, I kind of just showing you the tip of the iceberg here, but feel free to go on PubNub or Pusher, or there's a lot of these real-time services out there, and you know they all kind of work the same. They all have kind of a library you use with some messages for publishing and subscribing. That's the biggest. This is how you get a real-time message. That's why we don't have to refresh our browser. It's because we're subscribed to messages. So even if you know it doesn't make 100% sense right now, just give yourself some time to go over, you know, go PubNub, play around with a little bit yourself, and the more you play around with it, the more it makes sense on how to set up, you know, different kind of features in your app. But these are great questions. Does anyone have anything else today? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, we're out of here. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day, and happy coding out there. See you next time.